Good evening, folks. This is Brian Lawrence bringing you an updated Netherland, Colorado weather forecast from IndianPeaksWeather.net. And this was a beautiful Colorado weekend. It reminds us why we like to live here. Temperatures down in the plains reached up into the low 70s today. A little cooler up here in the foothills. We're about 3,000, 3,500 feet higher than the plains. So our high temperatures are generally in the low to mid 50s here in Netherland and some of the foothill towns. That's still pretty warm for us given it's November 1st, however, and we'll take it, although the skiers among us are starting to get a little bit antsy. We do want some snow. It at least has to stay cold enough at the ski resorts so they can make snow, but natural snow is always better. So what's it like out there right now? Well, this is the Wonder Map from Weather Underground. And you can see on the plains it's still very warm for this time of year. Temperatures generally in the upper 40s to lower 50s. A couple readings in the mid 50s down around Superior, and when you get down towards Westminster and Denver. Up here in the foothills, just a little bit cooler right now. Generally low to mid 40s around Netherland, Gold Hill. A little cooler up towards Pinecliff where they're a little bit higher, in the low 40s there. And around the 40-degree mark in the hills around Blackhawk down here. And we have a few radar echoes here. These are most likely just ground clutter right now. There's not much in the way of weather actually happening. And there hasn't been for the past few days on the Front Range or the plains. Again, very nice weekend. It was a great weekend to get out and enjoy the fall weather. And it's been that way a lot this fall. We've had a lot of warm temperatures. And I guess a lot of people really aren't complaining, but it would be nice to hit the slopes too and get some Nordic skiing in as well. So we'll take a look at that in the future, see if there's any snow coming down the road for us. Let's take a quick look at the big weather picture right now. First, though, I'm going to bring up the satellite image. A couple interesting things on the satellite image here. You see this big plume of moisture over the eastern U.S. This is what we call a baroclinic leaf. If you use your imagination, it does look a little bit like a leaf here. See that? And this is actually, there's a storm system right now, an upper level system with a weak surface low pressure area. It's located right about here right now, and it's advecting a lot of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico up into the mid Atlantic area. And it's looking like it's going to be pretty wet there tonight through tomorrow. Back over towards our neck of the woods, pretty clear. Look at this. Not a cloud in the sky right now, at least on the infrared. Doesn't mean there could be a few lower clouds around, but nothing in the way of precipitation. And then, of course, you've got this banner of precipitation just pushing across Northern California. And good news if you're in Northern California or Lake Tahoe, you're finally going to get some precipitation. And as you know, it's been very dry there for the past few years, record breaking droughts and record breaking fires. So this is going to help. There's going to be snow in the hills here through Lake Tahoe, and that's good news for them. One more other thing, we'll bring the Doppler radar up here, and hopefully you can see this. And again, there is that precipitation associated with that plume of moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Some heavier rains down towards northern Louisiana. All this around here is just ground clutter. It happens at night sometimes with Doppler radar, where you get an inversion and the radar beam actually refracts back into the ground. So this is probably not real precipitation through here, but this is for sure. And right through here, you can see this stream of moisture coming off across northern California, and some of it making it across the mountains into northern Nevada, into Utah, into the Wasatch. And this is associated with a storm system that's going to be the focus of the weather in the southwestern U.S. over the next 3 to 4 days, and it may affect us as well. Last week we were talking about the possibility of snow Wednesday and Thursday, perhaps even Friday. Well, the models are pulling into line now with this storm system, and it's not looking quite as good anymore, but we should definitely see some snow midweek nonetheless. Just not a very big storm. All right. I always like to look at the big picture first, especially when we're talking long range forecasts. Again, look at trends as opposed to specifics when we start looking at forecasts that are a week or so away. This is the 6 to 10 day outlook. Not very exciting, but it does show some below normal temperatures over northern Nevada. Most of the country, though, is warm, at least warmer than normal. Precipitation wise, not unusual for an El Nino winter where you see wetter than normal conditions across the southern third of the country. In this case, from Texas all the way over to the southern mid Atlantic. Below normal precipitation across us here in Colorado. And if we go just a little bit further into the future, the 8 to 14 day outlook, not too different. Actually, still quite warm, especially across the northern tier states and the northern Great Lakes. Wow. And again, you do tend to see that a lot in an El Nino type of late fall and winter scenario. You don't get quite as many cold air outbreaks when you have these conditions. Still below normal in the Great Basin area here. And precipitation wise, quite wet across the eastern third of the country. Still dry, or at least better chances of below normal precipitation across the eastern two-thirds of Colorado, including the eastern plains, and us here on the Front Range foothills in Nederland. And looking like some much-needed moisture perhaps getting into the Pacific Northwest. So definitely good news for some of the areas that have suffered the worst over the past few years on the West Coast with the drought. Not looking great for us right now here in Colorado in terms of snow. What I'd like to do, and we're going to take a look at the short range model this time. We're going to look at the North American model, the NAM, and it goes out to 84 hours. We're just going to focus on this week and the storm coming up in this discussion. And I would like to start with the 500 relative humidity and heights. We'll bring that up. We'll start to loop it. And again, why do I like to look at this level of the atmosphere? We're basically looking at the wind flows and the humidity patterns at about 16,000 to 18,000 feet above sea level. So that's well above the mountains, even here in Colorado. And it's getting above the orographic effects that those mountains can induce. And it gives us an idea of where the energy in the atmosphere is. As I discussed last time, I'll bring up the marker here. We have our troughs. That didn't work very well. Let's try that. We have our troughs, and here's a trough axis. We have another trough down here, and this is early tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. or so. This trough down here is responsible for the precipitation we're seeing or expecting across the southern mid-Atlantic. And again, typically on the east side of a trough axis, you get lift, and on the west side of the trough axis, you get descent. Same in this case with this trough digging into the west coast, you tend to get lift. And on this side, you tend to get descent. And of course, there's always exceptions, but that's what we look for when we're trying to forecast weather, is to identify areas of lift. Because when you have lift, then you can get precipitation, you can get sensible weather. And here's that moisture plume that we're looking at on radar. And again, it's on the east side of this trough where we get the lift, so it's not surprising we're seeing that. And the same thing with this precipitation area down here. And where are we right now in Colorado? Well, let's see here. I'm going to clear those lines, and we're going to draw a ridge. It's not a well-defined ridge, but it's enough of a ridge to bring generally dry conditions to us, at least for the next couple of days, Monday and Tuesday. And it's also enough of a ridge such that the winds are generally from the west throughout the lower and mid-levels of the atmosphere. And that means the plains are going to be getting downslopes off the Continental Divide. You're going to be getting those Chinook warming effects. So some markedly warm temperatures across the plains Monday and Tuesday, I expect. Back here. So let's just step forward in time here a little bit and see how this upper level flow evolves. You see that trough in the west really starting to carve out into the Great Basin. By Tuesday morning, it's almost into the central portions of the Great Basin. Now this is looking a little different than what we were looking at a few days ago, where this trough was digging out way down into Southern California. It was cutting off. And it was actually looking promising for us to get a decent precipitation event. This trough now is generally, it's staying open. If you watch this, for the most part, it's an open trough. It's a very deep trough. And as we get into Wednesday morning, the trough axis is now on the Utah-Nevada line. And Colorado is getting into a very deep southwesterly flow. Not favorable for areas east of the Continental Divide, including Nederland and the northeast plains of Colorado. It's a little bit better for the west side of the Continental Divide, where you can still get some orographic lift and some precipitation from these southwesterly winds. And then as we progress through the day on Wednesday, you see the trough starts to actually lift out. So it's moving a little bit faster now than we were thinking a few days ago. And then by Thursday morning, the trough axis is almost over the Continental Divide. There should be enough energy here. I'm just going to draw a line where the axis is. There should be enough energy to produce some precipitation over the northeast plains and Nederland in the foothill locations. And of course, in the foothill locations, it will be snow. It'll be cold enough to be snow, but not a lot. And when we take a look at the surface maps, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then as we finally, this is the last frame actually, you can see the trough is really starting to lift out. And if we were to track that trough, it's basically moving something like this. That's not an optimal track for a trough for Denver and northeastern Colorado. Again, it's better for areas west of the divide, including Winter Park, Steamboat Springs, perhaps even down southwestern Colorado, where if they can catch some of these southwesterly winds, they can get some snow down there as well. But it's not a good one for us. For us, an ideal track for the low would have been more like this. A lot of times you see these cutoff lows that track like this. The center of the trough has to basically track to our south and east in order to get a decent precipitation event. Let's take a look at the surface map associated with this. We'll look at the 1,500 millibar thickness, but for all intents and purposes, that is the surface map. We'll load this up. It's going to loop through real quick. We'll just let it go. I'll stop it. And again, this map, basically surface lows. Here's a low here, very weak low forming the Great Basin. Not much of a surface pressure feature associated with this precipitation. A lot of it's upper level dynamics, which is impressive. On the East Coast, there's enough moisture where you don't need to have a very deep storm system to get some really significant rains when the setup is right and you have good moisture. And they've got plenty of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and Atlantic. But shifting the focus back to us, look at California. They're happy right now. There's quite a bit of precipitation expected across central, northern California, including this High Sierra. I think I was looking at snow levels generally starting out about 8,000, 8,500 feet, but dropping. And they're expecting 1 to 2 feet of snow above about 8,500 feet. So great news for them. As we progress ahead a little bit, we'll go into Tuesday morning. You can see where the trough is digging out here. Surface lows are really tricky out west because the west is high. And a lot of these surface features, these surface lows are actually beneath the ground. So try to wrap your mind around that, but don't worry too much about it. It's just that a lot of times out west, it's better to look at higher levels. Not necessarily up to 500 millibars, but let's say up to 700 millibars, which is about 9,000, 9,500 feet, to get an idea of where fronts are and where pressure features are. But regardless, we do see the thickness lines here, and generally the higher the thickness, the warmer the atmosphere is. Doesn't exactly tell us where that warm air is in the atmosphere, but in this case you can see the pressure lines here. Here's a low. In fact, let me draw a little bit. We'll make our big red low here. See the low here, and you can see the circulation around that low is counterclockwise, and it's bringing up the warm air. So there's a lot of warm air advection ahead of this trough, especially in the plains and over eastern Colorado. That just means temperatures are going to be above normal. Back here. All right. Let's see. So we'll continue to step forward a little bit. Go into Wednesday evening. Again, high and dry here in Colorado. Precipitation starting to make it into the border between Utah and Colorado. Perhaps seeing some precipitation Tuesday night in the San Juans and the western slope. And you can see the trough is definitely has dug out into the southwest here. Keep going to Wednesday morning. And by Wednesday morning, there's quite a bit of precipitation over the western slope. So areas such as the Grand Mesa, San Juan Mountains, the Uncompahgre Plateau, Definitely be seeing some snow. Grand Junction will probably be rain. It's a little warm for them still. It's not a very cold storm, but it has more cold air than recent storms have had. And you can also see the precipitation stretching back down into New Mexico and Arizona. But again, here, Denver, foothills, east of the divide, nothing yet. Continue stepping forward. Go into Wednesday evening. This is where things get a little bit more interesting for us. We start to see what we call lee side cyclogenesis here. I'm going to use the term like cyclogenesis very loosely here because it's not going to be a bomb by any means. But there are certain parts of the country that favor the development of low pressure areas. And a couple of those areas include where we are, here on the east side of the Continental Divide and in the central and southern Rockies. Another area is off Cape Hatteras here. And another area is over here to the lee of the mountains, the Rockies in Canada and Alberta. So those are our three primary cyclogenetic areas. And of course, those could form anywhere, but climatologically speaking, these areas are favored for a number of reasons, which I won't quite get into tonight because then I'll have to talk a lot of weather geek speak. I don't want to do that to you right now. I'll slowly introduce you to some of these concepts over the next few months. What we do see here, though, and I'll just step forward to say around midnight on Thursday, is we see some cold air making it into Colorado and in the Northeast Plains. Again, that low is very weak. I really doubt that winds are ever going to become upslope or really favorably upslope of the Front Range. And we need winds to become from the northeast or east through a decent layer of the atmosphere in order to get good precipitation in the foothills and northeast plains. Instead, I suspect this will be a little bit more of a Bora type event where you have cold air coming in, but it's coming in on northwesterly winds, still coming over the mountains, still getting warmed a little bit, but it's definitely cold air advection. And in those cases, we do tend to get some precipitation that makes it over the mountains and down to the plains. Usually doesn't last very long, and it usually is pretty light. In this case, however, it's showing precipitation in the mountains, maybe up to 2/10 of an inch, quarter inch. If that were to materialize, then we'd be looking at 1 to 3 inches of snow in the foothills, and maybe a little bit of rain mixed with snow on the plains. But again, not a big storm, but enough to whiten the ground and give us a little bit of moisture. One last thing I really want to show you before we end this session tonight, something new I haven't shown you before. This is a skew T chart. I won't go into the gory details of how this works, but suffice it to say that it gives us a view of the atmosphere from the surface, down here around 1,000 millibars, up to basically the top of the atmosphere here. And if you look on the side here, this is elevations, altitudes above sea level. 5,000 feet, 10,000 feet, and about the top of Long's Peak here, 14,300 feet, all the way up to 53,000 feet. It gives us an idea of what's going on with the winds, temperature, and dew point, humidity, through the layer of the atmosphere at a specific location. And in this case, we're going to look at Denver. Okay, you say, so big deal, Brian. Why do I care? Well, it's important because with the storm coming up, we really want to see how the winds are going to behave along the Front Range. If they do have a more northeasterly component, we'll probably get more precipitation. And we'll go out to 60 hours. This will take us to Wednesday morning. And again, as I was saying, that trough's approaching from the Great Basin. The winds are coming from the southwest throughout most of the atmosphere. Not good for the Front Range in terms of precipitation. And if you look here, this is the temperature line, this is the dew point line. The further they are apart, the drier the atmosphere. Important thing though is the winds are from the southwest. And that means we're going to be getting downslope for the most part on this side of the divide. Let's go to Wednesday evening. Wednesday evening, a little bit more interesting. It's a little hard to see at the bottom here, but there is a component of the wind here just in the lowest layers of the atmosphere where it's from the northwest. But otherwise, again, we're still under that southwesterly flow throughout the atmosphere. The distance between the temperature and the dew point line here is a little less now, which means the atmosphere is moistening up, but still not enough to produce precipitation for us here, but maybe some high clouds. Definitely, I think some high clouds by Wednesday afternoon. and Wednesday evening. And then we'll go to 78 hours. And look at that. It's changed quite a bit now. This is Thursday. This is Wednesday night. It's close to midnight. And you can see that the atmosphere, the temperature line and dew point line are almost on top of each other. That means the atmosphere is saturated. It's actually saturated up to almost 19,000 feet. So it's a pretty dense layer of clouds there. Do we have lift to produce any precipitation out of that moisture? Well, this is really busy here. But if we look at the hodograph, this is what this funny little target bullseye thing is on this right-hand side of the screen. It's hard to read, but this shows us how the winds change with height. And these are the wind speeds, 20 knots, 40 knots, 60 knots. So starting at the ground level, you can see the winds are coming from the north here. And then they switch around from the northwest a little bit, northeast, and then they swing around to the southwest when we get about 4 or 5 kilometers above the ground. And you can sort of make that out here. So we do expect some colder air to be coming in. The more of a northeasterly component it has, the better chance we are of getting some lift, orographic lift from the foothills. And with that trough coming through, we have upper level dynamics, which should help produce some more lift. So that's something to keep an eye on the next couple days. If we can get a slightly more easterly component here, a little bit deeper in the atmosphere, we may get some more appreciable precipitation here in Nederland. I still doubt we'll get anything significant, but it may make the difference between 1 or 2 inches or 2 to 4 inches. Then finally, we'll go to 84 hours. This is Thursday morning. Atmosphere is still fairly saturated, but look now, the winds are generally from the northwest, and that'll produce a drying effect over the foothills. Sometimes when you have these light northwesterly winds, you actually get a dry slot over Nederland, Gold Hill, Rollinsville, but then you get precipitation on the plains. So we'll have to see how that works here. All right, it's a lot of information for tonight, but in a nutshell, I'll bring up the Nederland forecast here. And again, we'll look at the weather underground forecast and then tweak it if we need to. All right. In a nutshell, we have a couple superb days coming up here. Monday and Tuesday, temperatures well above normal for Nederland. I'm thinking mid to upper 50s is probably pretty good, and the mercury will not be dropping down below freezing at night. Pretty unusual for November. It's just been a very warm fall. Wednesday, the storm moves in, 3 to 5 inches. I don't know. I think that's awfully high. But we'll have to keep an eye on it, and I'll post an update or two before Wednesday as things become more certain. But I think these totals are a little bit high. I suspect Wednesday and Thursday, it'll be mainly Wednesday afternoon through Thursday morning, 1 to 3 inches at the most. Enough to make for a potentially tricky drive. Look at these temperatures here. I think those are a little bit cold, but I would expect temperatures by Thursday morning to be, well, probably in the low 20s, 24, 25 degrees. And as you all know, up in Nederland, that first snowfall tends to be the most treacherous in terms of the roads around here, so leave yourself extra time to get to work. And then things don't really recover for the weekend. And I didn't really look at the models that far out, but notice that highs will generally be in the 30s, low 40s on Sunday, but look at the lows, 22, 25, 25. It'll feel like winter, and if we do get a little bit of snow on Thursday, maybe it'll stick around for the weekend and make it feel like winter. Anyhow, I appreciate your joining me tonight, and as always, please visit my site, CanadianPeaksWeather.net. Feel free to ask any questions, and I'll be talking to you in a day or two.